taught and a lot of what he advocated back then has 100% relevance today.
He said a penny saved is a penny earned.
A penny saved is a penny earned. He helped. He worked out the financing to have the revolution. Otherwise, we'd still be the colonies.
That was the second phase of his diplomacy. After, by and large, failing as a diplomat in England, he had some problems getting through his agenda in England. But with that failure, we see Franklin the American being born, in essence. And he comes back to the colonies ready to become a revolutionary. Right.
He was, because he wasn't he didn't hate the king. Not at the beginning.
Not at the beginning.
No, he actually was fond of the king and the idea.
And when he was first going over there, he was welcomed.
Exactly.
It wasn't until some of these other things came up that he actually became an American.
Right.
And that kind of attitude still lives on today, which is another reason why he's so relevant. And I'm glad they're having a 300 thing. So he was also a scientist. We talked about some of his things, the lightning rod and electricity with the key, the battery.
The lightning rod's important because he basically gave it away to the world. I mean, the man corners the market on the lightning rod. It works the same today as it did. Franklin's design is still the standard design. We still use the same principles, and it asked for no patents, no compensation, gave it away.
Now, and he didn't try to patent any of his other ideas, did he?
No.
I don't think does he have any patents?
No.
On the battery?
He didn't want a patent on anything. He believed that everything he did should be shared. And he would have said the same thing about everyone else.
Right.
Sort of the original open source.
That's true.
Oh, wow. Person. He could be the CEO of Google right now.
That's it.
He was a philosopher. He's considered a philosopher. In what way would that be relevant today?
Well, I think that a lot of his expressions, particularly, we think of Franklin the philosopher mostly in what he wrote between the standard aspects in Poor Richard's Almanac. It's a standard almanac. It's got phases of the moon and planting advice and weather forecast. But as filler, Franklin gave us all of these sayings, like a penny saved, a penny earned. But he also gave us insight into the Enlightenment mind. And that puts him in contrast with many ministers of his age that were pushing for a return to a more, what we would call evangelical stance. And Franklin is giving us this Enlightenment philosophy, sort of between the lines in Poor Richard's Almanac, encouraging people to make with what they have what they can. How can I be useful in the world? That was Franklin.
Philanthropist?
Gave away tremendous amounts
of wealth.
Even in death, bequeathed £1,000 each to the cities of Philadelphia and Boston, with the idea that they couldn't touch the principle for 200 years.
They were with the help of people like Hamilton.
Right.
He could live off the interest. They were funding city resources off of the interest. Because £1,000.
That was a lot.
That was a lot of money. I mean, if you were trying to, I don't know what they calculate out, but it would be a lot of money today.
Well, when Boston cashed in their principal after the 200 years, I think they wound up with about $5 million.
Wow.
Philadelphia had not accrued quite as much interest, and so theirs was a little over $2 million.
And if you were trying to, if you backtrack that and adjusted it for inflation, et cetera, you're talking about, that's about how much he gave each city, as far as it's worth. But there's a certain, it had, back then $1 million would have, or £1,000, had a much greater impact on the daily life of even, a large city like Philadelphia. A lot of people wouldn't consider?
Personally, Franklin was sort of a bank. I mean, out of pocket would give loans to different people, a couple of shillings or a couple £100 if needed. He would do these kinds of transactions to help people out, not necessarily to increase his wealth, but to share his wealth in a way that could help other people get a start.
Okay, and what's a humorist?
You, of course, someone who's funny.
But that's not how he wasn't a comedian, was he?
Well, he was.
That's not what we're talking about here. When they're talking about Ben Franklin as a humorist, they're not saying comedian. He was something else, a satirist or what? Or what are we talking?
He could be all those things, and he could be a little petty about it, or he could be very generous about it. But again, saying something to the effect of, God provides the cure, the doctor collects the fee.
Right.
That kind of humor that people could relate to in their everyday lives.
Especially back then.
Yes.
Okay, and we're kind of running out of time. There are certain events that are happening over the course of when it starts, which is, I think I have it written down here somewhere.
The grand opening is August 28th. The first day will be open for the public is August 29th.
29th.
Saturdays and Sundays will be open from 12 to 4, and Monday through Thursday from 2 to 7 p.m. And if people are interested in coming other times, they can call 484-1041 or email us at benfranklin@urbana.edu, and we can make arrangements for groups or classes to visit, as well as, if private individuals can't come during those times, we can make arrangements for the exhibit to be open for them. And then throughout the whole month of September, we have a variety of activities going on.
Some of them are brown bag lunches.
That's right. Most Tuesdays at noon. We'll be using a variety of our faculty members to talk about different aspects of Franklin. One week we'll be talking about a penny saved is a penny earned.
Right.
With Professor Rachel Wilson from our business department and Rick Anderson from Champaign Bank.
Right.
And we'll be talking about gout. Franklin suffered from gout. That might not be great to talk about at lunchtime, but it wasn't important.
All day at gout.
That's right.
He was very descriptive in writing about gout.
And apparently, as you were telling us before when we were during the break, apparently that definition is used today.
His description is still used in medical school. My doctor assures me of this. He was so specific.
I think I'm going to take up gout today. I'm learning everything I can about gout.
Well, it caused so much pain that sort of as comedic relief, he wrote an essay to the gout, as if the gout was having a conversation with him and he was talking to the gout. And it affected him because he couldn't walk.
Well, I'm glad he wasn't the only one who kind of finds some humor in it, because I still don't know what it is.
It's a form of arthritis, and today we think it's connected with kidney disease.
Oh.
That at that time would have been undiagnosed in Franklin's time. But when you see those pictures of him being taken to the Constitutional Congress in a sedan, where people are carrying him in and it almost looks like a kingly type of presentation, it was because he couldn't walk.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. And then they're going to have Ben Franklin in free speech. He's a huge free speech guy.
That's right.
My kind of guy. The show is all about it. I mean, we make use of it. I mean, we wouldn't have this show if we didn't have free speech.
He was very much for the popular vote, too. He did not like the idea of the Senate as we have it today. He wanted representation based on population, perhaps a unicameral legislature along the model that Pennsylvania pioneered, but at least more direct representation.
And at one point in time, they used to appoint the senators in the beginning. And now they elect them.
All the way up until the 20th century,
Right.
Some states.
Okay, one last time. It's August 28th through October 6th, with the grand opening happening on the 28th. It will be open on Monday through Thursdays, 2 to 7, and Saturday and Sunday, noon to 4. The exhibit can be open to other times by appointment by calling 937-484-1041. And of course, you can always email. Who's getting that email?
Me.
You're getting the email? You can always email Julie at
Ben Franklin.
benfranklin@urbana.edu.
Right.
And the exhibit itself will be at the Urbana University Student Center.